Dragi maturanti, dobar dan. Dobrodošli u novu video lekciju iz engleskog jezika u sklopu priprema za polaganje engleskog jezika na državnoj maturi. Danas ćemo nastaviti rješavati prvi zadatak iz testa čitanja s razumijevanjem. U današnjoj lekciji analizirat ćemo prilagođeni tekst pri čitanju. Od pribora vam u današnjoj lekciji trebaju samo bilježnica, nešto za pisanje, kemijska olovka ili obična olovka i pristup internetu. Pa počnimo. In our previous lesson, I gave you some tips on how to tackle the questions in this kind of task. So let's remind ourselves of the first paragraph. This is what Alicia says. I flew to London to interview for a place at the university. I was so nervous I spent the flight worrying about what I was going to say. My hotel was okay, but I kept waking up during the night. The interview went horribly, I thought. I left the interview feeling good for nothing, sure that I hadn't been good enough. I thought it would have been better if I had stayed at home, but the following week I heard that I had been accepted and suddenly the world was a beautiful place. If we take a closer look, we can see that she says, the interview went horribly, I thought. I left the interview feeling good for nothing, sure that I hadn't been good enough. And this part of the text contains the correct answer for the sixth question. So Alicia felt she had failed. Then this line, I kept waking up during the night, is the correct answer to the ninth question. So it means that she slept badly. And finally, she also says, I thought it would have been better if I had stayed at home. In other words, Alicia wished she hadn't gone. Let's read the second paragraph. Bailey says, I just needed time for myself, so I went to London where nobody knew me or would even notice me. I needed to get a sense of direction again in my life. I wandered around the streets aimlessly until I found myself in Green Park. I sat on a bench next to an old woman and we started to talk. We talked, and I told her everything. It was like we were friends despite the age difference. When I left, I felt better about myself and ready to resume my life. So this last part contains the answer to the 12th question, gained in confidence, because Bailey says, when I left, I felt better about myself and ready to resume my life. And the B is the correct option only for the 12th question. Now let's identify the distractors. The first thing I noticed is this one, when he says, I went to London where nobody knew me. So it would be an incorrect option for the 10th question, felt lonely. This line, I needed to get a sense of direction, is an incorrect option for the 6th question, felt they had failed. I wandered around the streets aimlessly. One might think that Bailey got lost, but that's not true. He just wandered around the streets aimlessly. And finally, he says that he sat next to an old woman and they started to talk. We talked, and I told her everything. It was like we were friends. This is a distractor too. He just mentions the same word here in this part of the text and in the 5th question. So that old woman wasn't his old friend. We can go on the 3rd paragraph. Here is the 3rd paragraph. This is what Chris says. I had an awful weekend. On the way from the station to the hotel, someone knocked into my taxi and I ended up wheeling my suitcase through the crowded streets. At the hotel, the traffic noise was far too loud, so I had to find a different one. Then I spent the day walking around shops but didn't find anything I wanted and could afford. The bed in the new hotel was so uncomfortable I thought I'd never sleep. Fortunately, I was too exhausted to care, and the next day it poured with rain, so it was not a successful visit. The underlined part: on the way from the station to the hotel, someone knocked into my taxi, contains the correct answer to the fourth question. Which person was involved in an accident? So it's Chris. And here are the distractors. He says, at the hotel, the traffic noise was far too loud, so I had to find a different one. It means the traffic noise was too loud, but it doesn't mean the hotel he stayed in was noisy, and he eventually changed the hotel. He didn't stay there. This is what Daniela says. I was in an area where I hadn't been for years, but I was confident I would find my way around. Things had changed though, and soon I had no idea where I was. Then a passerby seemed to recognize me. It was someone I hadn't seen since secondary school. We'd been mates back then, but had lost contact over the years. I could hardly recognize her. She had changed so much. If I hadn't quite by accident gone down the street at the time, we would probably never have got into contact again. Pay a closer look at these lines. Then a passerby seemed to recognize me. It was someone I hadn't seen since secondary school. We'd been mates back then. So these lines contain synonyms friend and mate. These two words are synonyms. So they contain the answer to the fifth question. Which person met an old friend? And if you read these lines carefully, things had changed though, and soon I had no idea where I was. You will notice that it is the correct answer to the eighth question, which person got lost. As far as distractors are concerned, in this final part of the paragraph, she says, if I hadn't quite by accident gone down that street at the time, we would probably never have got into contact again. This is a distractor because the word accident is just mentioned, and it's mentioned in the fourth question, but it's not a correct option for the fourth question. Ellen says, I wasn't looking forward to it at all. First, I had to fly there, which is quite a challenge for someone who's dead scared of flying, like me, and the turbulence on the way there didn't help. And I didn't know the people I'd be staying with. In fact, I didn't really want to go there, but my parents insisted. These people were old friends of theirs. They turned out to be really nice, not what I had expected. They were all I could have wished for, and I ended up having a fantastic time. So here, but they turned out to be really nice, not what I had expected. You can see the answer to the first question, which person was happily surprised. In the end, they turned out to be really nice. And look at these lines. I had to fly there, which is quite a challenge for someone who's dead scared of flying like me, and the turbulence on the way there didn't help. These lines contain the answer to the second question, which person experienced flight anxiety. As far as distractors are concerned, there are these lines. I didn't really want to go there, but my parents insisted. These people were old friends. So you can see old friends in the fifth question, met an old friend. This is again a distractor. And this is the last paragraph. Frederick says, it had always been my dream to watch a match at Wembley, and now I had a ticket. I booked a room not too far from the stadium, and I found myself surrounded by fans staying in the same hotel. They stayed up drinking and singing until well into the night. I kept in my room feeling sad I had no one to share this experience with. Next morning, refreshed, I had a big breakfast and made my way to the stadium. The rest of the day gave me the happiest of memories. So the lines, it had always been my dream to watch a match at Wembley, and now I had a ticket contain the answer to the third question, which person realized a wish. He says it had always been his dream to watch a match at Wembley. And the lines, they stayed up drinking and singing until well into the night, contain the answer to the seventh question, which person stayed in a noisy hotel. And the lines, I kept in my room feeling sad I had no one to share this experience with, contain the answer to the 10th question, which person felt lonely. He was sad and he had no one to share his experience with. And this was the last paragraph. We've come to the end of the lesson. All the tests from previous years, both summer and autumn tests, are available on the webpage of Croatian National Center for External Evaluation. The best thing you can do is to download them and practice. Hope you'll do well in your exams. Good luck.